There is no argument that the evil queen from Snow White was a through-and-through Disney villain, but she wasn't given much of a backstory in the movie, and it almost seemed like her only motive for being evil was because she wanted to be the fairest of them all. Well, thanks to Serena Valentino's book, Fairest of All, A Tale of the Wicked Queen, fans were given a bit more insight into all of the ingredients that came together to create the villain that almost killed Snow White. Be warned, when you hear the truth about the origin of the evil queen, it might give you a different perspective on one of Disney's first villains, in the most gut-wrenching way. Before she married into a royal family, the evil queen wasn't so evil at all, and instead was actually subjected to malice every day of her childhood. According to Fairest of All by Serena Valentino, the queen grew up in a single-parent household after her mother passed away, and if that wasn't hard enough, her mother's death led to mistreatment at the hand of her own father. You see, the queen's father was a well-respected craftsman in their portion of the world, and his specialty was creating mirrors. And though he was shown to be successful, which would make you think that he would be happy, the man was shown to be miserable, particularly after the death of his wife. Sadly, she died during childbirth, for which he blamed the queen, and he was sure to let her know it. According to the book, the queen's father would take every opportunity that he could to let her know how he felt about her. He would tell her that she was ugly and that she was useless. Now, growing up hearing that on a daily basis was certainly tough on the queen, so it's no wonder that she leaned towards her villainous path. Serena's novel didn't go into much detail surrounding the death of the queen's father, but it was noted that he died by the time she found a bit of happiness in her life, however short-lasting as it would be. Now, there was a point in the queen's life where it seemed that she found some semblance of happiness, though it was quickly revealed to only be for a brief and fleeting moment. In Fairest of All, Serena shed a bit of light on the circumstances that surrounded her marriage to the king. The book actually opens on the couple's wedding and described the queen as if she were overflowing with happiness, and even expressed that the king was the man of her dreams. The two were genuinely in love with one another. She was even shown to have a good relationship with the king's daughter, Snow White, who was 4 years old at the time of their wedding. Sadly, just because their story started off happily doesn't mean that it would end that way. You see, the two met in a very Disney-esque way. The king was out for a ride and noticed his future wife standing near a well. It was essentially love at first sight, and the two couldn't keep themselves apart for long. According to Valentino's story, the king would sneak out and meet his future queen frequently until eventually their love grew enough for them to hear the sound of wedding bells. And as the story began by telling us, the two would end up getting married. And though their wedding day was described as a joyous occasion in general, there did appear to be one damper on it that would end up leading to the queen's unhappiness. You see, in Fairest of All, the king was shown being very thoughtful, and as a kind gesture to his new bride, he purchased a gift for her that he felt she would love. He arranged for the most beautiful mirror from her father's shop to be presented to his queen at their wedding. And while this was a beautiful gesture, the book noted that there was something about the mirror that made the queen feel uneasy. It surrounded her with a dreadful feeling that almost ruined her otherwise joy-filled day. Little did she know that this terrible feeling was apparent for a reason, and the queen would soon begin to face a once again tragic life. Serena Valentino's book described the days that followed the wedding as being filled with happiness, and she explained that the queen had started out as a very loving stepmother to Snow White, but their veil of happiness is quickly pulled away from them as the king went to war to protect their kingdom. Though he often returned to the kingdom over the years, the book explained that the king was often forced to return to the battlefield, and eventually, the queen's world was shattered when the king's luck in battle ran out and he was tragically slain. Understandably, the queen's happiness quickly dissipated, and she began living a depressing life that would inevitably turn her into the villainous character that Disney introduced in 1937. You see, following the king's death, the queen was left to become the victim of his sinister cousins and a curse that she was left with, and there was very little that she could have done to stop it. After learning that her husband fell in battle, the queen and Snow White found solace in one another and became each other's support systems, according to Valentino's novel. The two kept each other close because, at that point, they were the only family that they had, and after growing so close, it became clear that the queen wouldn't let anyone hurt or upset her stepdaughter. Snow White became her world. However, that was quickly turned upside down, and the queen slowly became a darker and more sinister person because of all the bad happening around her. Some time had passed before the queen received 3 strange visitors who appeared unannounced. It turned out, upon hearing of the king's death, his 3 cousins decided to visit the kingdom. Now, these weren't just normal royal cousins. Instead, the king's cousins turned out to be 3 sinister witches, known as the Odd Sisters. And in Serena's book, it's hinted that the queen could tell that there was something strange about the Odd Sisters' presence, but it wasn't until they agonized and teased Snow White that she put her foot down. Once Snow White's stepmother saw her being bullied, the queen promptly banished the odd sisters from their household. But the banishment wasn't something that the sisters simply accepted. Instead, they were shown placing a curse on the queen and her lineage, and she didn't know the extent of the odd sisters' powers, which means that she had no idea that her life was going to continue to get worse. After banishing the odd sisters, the queen returned to her chambers and fell asleep, which is when the book reintroduced an item that was introduced earlier in the story. The mirror that the king had gotten for his wife on their wedding day had been hidden away since the queen got a strange feeling from it, but for some reason, it suddenly reappeared at the foot of her bed. But even stranger, inside the mirror, she could see a swirling face that she recognized right away as her deceased father. It turned out that the odd sisters trapped his soul in the mirror, and if asked a question, he was forced to answer honestly, just like the mirror shown in Disney's Snow White. That's right, the magic mirror was the evil queen's own father, making its role in her life seem even darker. Sadly, it would only push her another step in the wrong direction, and the mirror would end up playing a key role in the queen transitioning from a loving, supportive stepmother into an evil, murderous queen. You see, according to the book, after revealing himself to his daughter, the mirror informed the queen that he was her slave and that he could see all throughout the land. And after she learned that he would have to answer any question that she asked him honestly, the queen only had one thing on her mind. Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all? The mirror was forced to answer honestly, and to his own dismay, the queen's father admitted that she was the most beautiful person in the land. This became a routine question for the queen to ask her new mirror slave, and she slowly became obsessed with that single question and the control that it had over her father, who treated her so poorly when he was alive. Although this made her feel better at first, the queen may have stopped obsessing over her beauty had she known it was turning her into a wicked-minded fiend. The queen's constant questioning of her beauty to the mirror seemed to be pleasing her for a while. That was until her father responded in a way that she never expected him to. In Fairest of All, the evil queen's wicked side began to emerge when she asked the mirror her iconic question. But instead of saying that she was the fairest of them all, he responded by saying that her friend and handmaiden, Verona, was truly the fairest. That enraged the queen, and in order to make everything right for herself, she forced her handmaiden to take a job in a faraway land as a servant to a prince. And though this briefly worked and the queen was once again the fairest, her brief moment of peace was once again swiped away from her. Serena Valentino's novel began to take a similar turn to the classic Disney film at this point, and the queen's mirror told her that Snow White was now the fairest maiden in all of the land. And though she at one point was shown to love her stepdaughter, any semblance of that was thrown out of the window that moment the queen began obsessing over her beauty. And as the story goes, the queen poisoned an apple that sent Snow White into a deep sleep. This didn't bring the queen the happiness and peace that she expected it to, though, and in the book, she was actually distraught by what she had done. But so goes the tale of the evil queen. It's just sad to discover that a lot of her malice came from the torture that she endured at the hands of her own father, and the curse cast on her by the odd sisters. Has this changed your opinion of the evil queen, or is she still out of her mind for trying to kill Snow White? Make sure you let us know in the comments down below.